This Arc Warlock build is so good that it's going to repair your broken marriage. Results may vary though, because Karen still took my kids. Now, the other day I was scrolling Twitter just like anyone else with severe mental issues, and I came across a tweet from 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 talking about how fun Vesper of Radius is in in-game content. And I was like, there's no way, right? And I gotta say, it's a pretty nutty exotic, especially now that it's been reworked, and I wanted to share today's build with you because even as a Titan main, this build is single-handedly converting me over to the space magic lifestyle. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for all things Destiny 2 PvE, and let's jump into it. Firstly, our build hinges on Vesper of Radius, which got a rework not too long ago, which has turned it from a fairly niche exotic to one that is highly effective in the PvE endgame, even inside Grandmaster Nightfalls. What this exotic does is it buffs up your rift by allowing it to release arc shockwaves that damage and explode enemies, while also allowing you to blind them within a 7.5 meter radius. Now, not only that, but your rift recharges faster when you're near combatants, essentially allowing you to use your rift as a weapon and to play aggressively, which, thanks to the rework allowing you to blind targets, is so much easier than you might think. We're going to use this exotic alongside some aspects, fragments, and mods that fall into the playstyle so well that you'll be generating ability energy on a whole nother level, while also being granted some of the craziest survivability in Destiny. So, taking a look at our subclass, one of the most single important aspects we're going to be using is Electrostatic Mind. This will allow us to create ionic traces upon defeating targets that are blinded, jolted, or by defeating targets with arc abilities. Ionic traces are a main source of giving back ability energy, so our goal is to make as many of these as possible, starting with our next aspect, the Arc Soul. With this being a rift-based playstyle, Arc Souls are perfect as a passive means of dealing damage and generating more traces on those kills. This aspect also generates our rift quicker when nearby allies, and our Arc Souls even become stronger when we're amplified, which is almost going to be 24/7. Taking a look at fragments, we're going to be using Spark of Ions to create bonus ionic traces when defeating jolted targets. Next, we have Spark of Shock, which is going to allow our grenades to apply jolt. This is also going to allow us to counteract overload champions. Next, we have Spark of Resistance for a 25% damage resist when nearby enemies. And finally, we have Spark of Amplitude for making orbs of power when amplified. And this is going to play into the mods that we use very heavily. Finally, for abilities, I'm running Chaos Reach for burst damage, the Healing Rift of course, Chain Lightning as another means of applying Jolt, and finally Pulse Grenades, as those are the current best grenades for Arc. Now, remember what I said about Spark of Amplitude? Well, since we're going to be amplified 99% of the time, we'll be making quite a few orbs using that fragment, and in doing so, we should use orbs to the strength of our abilities instead of wasting them on something like weapon surges. So starting with the mods on the boots, I'm currently running Recuperation, which this is going to help with survivability, Absolution, which is going to give us 5% ability energy to all abilities on pickup, and Insulation for the 4% to class ability energy. Now, playing into the class ability, since that's the whole point of the build, for the bond, I'm using Distribution, which will give us 7% ability energy for all of our abilities when popping Rift. Then we have Bomber for the extra boost to grenade energy, with Powerful Attraction making orb pickup so much easier because, again, we just need to pop our Rift. Now for the helmet mods, I'm running Heavy Ammo Finder and Dynamo, which is going to give us super energy on every rift use, but you really can just run 2 dynamos if you'd like, especially if you're running double special, since heavy ammo will come anyways. And finally, for the gauntlets, I have Firepower for grenade kills generating orbs of power, as well as Bolstering Detonation and Focusing Strike, which are both going to allow us to use our other 2 abilities to feed into the class ability. This is truly about getting as much class ability as possible all the time, and that class ability then feeding into every other ability, including our super. So it's really just all feeding into itself to allow you to use as many abilities as possible, despite it being rift focused. And by the way, the chest armor that I have, I'm just running your usual resist mods as well as concussive dampener, so nothing much is going on there. Now, as far as the artifact is concerned, you're essentially going to want to run all of the arc mods here, and who would have guessed that? So amped up is really good to stay amplified longer. Thunderous Retort pairs very well with panic popping chaos reach. Electric armor is really good as it's going to give you added damage resist when you are amplified, which again is going to be an all the time thing. Shock and Awe is decent for extra damage, although the damage could be better, and Lightning Strikes Twice is just going to guarantee that your ability chaining will truly be effortless. As usual, with my build videos, I try not to make it to where I'm recommending a build that absolutely relies on the artifact, and I can promise you that this Vesper build isn't like that at all. When next season hits in August, I can promise you Vesper is still going to be great, and it might even end up being an exotic that I use in the day 1 raid, since the survivability in the ability region is just so damn nice. Now that we've gone over the exotic, our subclass, and the mod/artifact, let's talk about what weapons you should be using, as well as the general gameplay loop. And for that general gameplay loop, you're essentially going to purposely throw yourself into dire situations, for example, jumping into a group of enemies, then immediately popping your rift. This will then blind all nearby enemies as well as damaging them, while also giving you tons of rift energy in the process as you're standing right next to the enemies, allowing them to feed into your exotic. And from here, you can then use your grenade as well as your melee abilities as soon as possible, then continue repeating the process. Always be mindful to purposely place your rift in areas you think are going to have a lot of enemies. So whether you're jumping into a group of enemies and popping it on top of them, or let's say that you're defending an area that some enemies are going to funnel into, you can pop it there and the enemies will just come to you and then feed you energy. Just make sure that you're being smart as to keep enemies nearby for that ability regen, as well as the blind effect, which will generate you more ionic traces once the enemy is killed. As you've seen from the gameplay in the background, I have plenty of examples of inside Legend, Master, and even Grandmaster content where using your Rift aggressively is extremely beneficial, as the damage resistance, constant healing, and burst of blinding make it near impossible for the enemies to kill you if you're playing carefully. Enemies merely existing around you just feeds into this ability regen, allowing you to clear rooms very easily and just makes for an incredibly fun playstyle. Now, when it comes to what weapons you want to use with this build, it doesn't really matter, and that's the beauty of it. It's built in such a way that, yeah, having a weapon with Volt Shot would be nice since Jolt will net you extra ionic traces, but it's not needed whatsoever. Your weapon loadout is merely dependent on the content you're running because of things like champions, but even then, this build covers both unstops thanks to blinding with your Rift, and overloads thanks to jolting with your grenades. So at the end of the day, it's an incredibly versatile build that absolutely excels inside in-game content, and the best part, at least in my opinion, is that it's very fun to play. I know some people are very fond of Fallen Sunstar, maybe even the Crown of Tempest, but Vesper of Radius stands out from the rest as an exotic that invokes a very aggressive playstyle that dishes out a very high reward. It makes you play in a way that you don't traditionally play in, and I think there's something very special about that. Anyways guys, that's going to do it for me today. I hope you all enjoyed this rare Demon Joe build video, and let me know what you all thought in the comments down below, and maybe what you'd like me to cover next. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.